The Jeep, one of the most recognizable vehicles on Earth, the symbol of American freedom, military strength, and rugged adventure. Over 80 years of production, millions sold worldwide, a brand worth billions, owned today by Stellantis. The Wrangler, the Cherokee, the Grand Cherokee, machines that defined an entire category of vehicle. And the man who designed the original? A freelance engineer from Detroit. He worked for free. His name isn't even on the memorial plaque at the Jeep's birthplace. This is his story. In the summer of 1940, the United States Army sent out a challenge that bordered on impossible. 135 automakers were invited to design a lightweight, four-wheel drive reconnaissance vehicle capable of carrying half a ton but weighing no more than 1,300 pounds. The deadline for a working prototype was 49 days from the contract award. For most companies, the requirements were a logistical nightmare. But for the American Bantam Car Company in Butler, Pennsylvania, this was more than a technical puzzle. It was a last-ditch effort to survive. Bantam, once a hopeful player in the automotive world, had been battered by the Great Depression. By 1940, its payroll ledger showed only a handful of employees left. The factory's balance sheet revealed a net loss for the year, and the plant floor, once humming with activity, was now eerily quiet. Frank Fenn, Bantam's president, knew that without a miracle, the company would close its doors for good. When the Army's solicitation arrived, it was less an opportunity than a lifeline. Fenn pored over the Army's spec sheet, realizing that Bantam's own resources were stretched to the breaking point. The company had no in-house engineer capable of pulling off such a feat, and no money to hire one. Desperation forced Fenn to look beyond the company walls. He reached out to Karl Probst, a seasoned freelance engineer in Detroit, whose reputation for creative problem-solving had made him a quiet legend in the industry. There was no promise of pay, just a plea for help and the faint hope of future recognition. For Bantam, the bid was not just about winning a contract. It was a gamble for survival, a last stand against the looming shadow of bankruptcy. The decision to call on Probst set in motion a chain of events that would not only rescue a dying factory, but also shape the future of military mobility, and begin a story of invention and erasure that still echoes today. Karl Probst arrived in Butler, Pennsylvania, with nothing more than a suitcase and a battered briefcase of drafting tools. The factory was silent, its future hanging by a thread. There was no contract, no salary, only a handshake and a plea. Probst, a seasoned Detroit engineer known for his work on lightweight chassis, agreed to take on the Army's impossible assignment for nothing but the promise of recognition. He set up shop in a cramped office above the factory floor, surrounded by exhausted Bantam mechanics and stacks of Army specification sheets. With the clock already running, Probst launched into a 2-day marathon. He sketched, calculated, and redrew, working through 2 sleepless nights. Shop notes from July 13 and 14, 1940 show him revising the wheelbase, recalculating axle loads, and penciling out a new transfer case design on the back of old invoices. By the end of the second day, he had produced a full set of engineering drawings, chassis blueprints, drivetrain layouts, even the iconic flat grille. Every line was hand-drawn. No models, no prototypes, just paper and ink. The complete design package was delivered to Bantam's president within 48 hours, meeting the Army's demand for a ready-to-build blueprint. Probst's Detroit resume was already impressive, but this feat was unmatched. He had engineered a new kind of vehicle from scratch, under crushing time pressure and for no pay. His signature appears on the original drawing set dated July 15, 1940, now archived at the Smithsonian. These sheets would become the DNA of the Jeep, copied and distributed by the Army to every major automaker in the country. As soon as the drawings were finished, Bantam's skeleton crew moved into round-the-clock fabrication, racing to turn Probst's vision into steel before the 49-day deadline expired. The countdown to the prototype's first test had begun, with Probst's unpaid genius as its foundation. The Bantam factory lights burned all night as the deadline closed in. Exhausted mechanics tightened bolts and checked wiring while Karl Probst paced the floor, blueprint in hand, watching every detail come together. At dawn, the prototype rolled out, barely painted, still smelling of hot steel. Ralph Turner, Bantam's test driver, climbed behind the wheel with a thermos of coffee and a stack of Army paperwork. The route from Butler, Pennsylvania to Camp Holabird in Maryland stretched nearly 750 miles. Turner drove without pause, pushing the new machine through rain, dust, and the uncertainty of back roads. 2 quick fuel stops and a single hour's rest were all he allowed himself. The Army's gate log at Holabird records his arrival at 5:52 p.m., just 7 minutes before the 6 p.m. cutoff. Turner's hands shook as he signed the entry sheet, the engine ticking as it cooled. Bantam's trip sheet and the Army's own records confirmed the feat. A run across the state completed in under 14 hours, the prototype delivered with the clock still running. The Army's officers, waiting at the gate, watched as the battered vehicle rolled in. Against every expectation, Bantam had met the impossible deadline. Probst's unpaid design, built by a desperate crew, now stood ready for the Army's test. For a brief moment, the smallest player in American industry had beaten the giants to the finish line. In November 1940, a single government memo, archived as RG 176-9A55, set off a chain reaction that would define the fate of Bantam and its unpaid engineer. The Army, having seen Bantam's prototype meet every requirement, circulated the original design drawings to Willys Overland and Ford Motor Company. The justification was blunt: national emergency, urgent need, mass production above all. Bantam's blueprints, signed by Karl Probst, were now government property, freely distributed to the giants of Detroit. There was no royalty, no contract, not even a guarantee of credit for the creator. Within weeks, Willys and Ford began producing their own test vehicles, each built directly from Probst's hand-drawn plans. The numbers tell the story of this transfer. Bantam, the company that had delivered the impossible, would produce just 2,675 vehicles before being pushed aside. Willys and Ford, armed with Bantam's work and far greater resources, would build more than 600,000 Jeeps by war's end. The Army's own production tables, filed in the same records as the memo, show the disparity in black and white. In the eyes of the War Department, it was a simple matter of capacity. But for those at Bantam, and for Probst himself, the memo was more than a bureaucratic formality. It was the moment when authorship was quietly erased, and the vehicle's true origins were buried beneath the machinery of mass production. Karl Probst died in Dayton, Ohio, on August 25, 1963, at the age of 79. His passing was noted in a short obituary in the local paper, which mentioned only that he had contributed to a United States Army vehicle. No hint of the global icon that carried his fingerprints. There was no fanfare, no national headline, no mention of the design sprint that changed the course of World War II. The man who had given away his genius for free slipped away quietly. His final years spent far from the spotlight, with no royalties, no awards, and little public acknowledgement. In Butler, Pennsylvania, the birthplace of the Jeep, a bronze plaque sits in the town square. It lists company names and executives, celebrates the American Bantam Car Company, and honors the site where the prototype was born. But Karl Probst's name is missing. The engineer who accepted a desperate call for help, who drew the Jeep's DNA in 2 sleepless days, is nowhere to be found on the memorial. His absence is not an oversight. It is a silence that echoes through automotive history. The cost of that silence is more than a footnote. For every parade of Jeeps rolling across continents, for every badge stamped on a new model, there is a missing credit. a human story erased. Probst's legacy, once so vital to Bantam's survival and to the war effort, faded into the background as the brand he shaped rose to unimaginable heights. The world remembers the Jeep. The world forgot the man who made it possible. In 1950, Willys Overland filed paperwork with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to claim exclusive rights to the word Jeep. The government granted the trademark that same year, cementing the Willys name as the official steward of the brand. The original application, numbered 735,837, attached the Jeep identity to a 1949 Willys CJ2A brochure, erasing all traces of Bantam and Karl Probst from the legal record. From that moment, the Jeep's corporate lineage followed a path through some of the largest names in American industry. Willys became Kaiser Jeep in 1953, then passed to American Motors Corporation in 1970. Chrysler absorbed AMC in 1987, and the Jeep badge survived a merger with Fiat in 2009. Today, the brand sits inside Stellantis, a global conglomerate worth tens of billions of dollars. Every new Wrangler, every Grand Cherokee, every ad that leans on the Jeep's wartime legend draws its power from a design first sketched by Probst in a silent factory for no pay. Yet the official histories, the legal filings, and the profits have all flowed to companies whose only original contribution was scale. The vehicle that began as a desperate act of survival for Bantam now stands as one of the most valuable and recognized automotive names in the world. The man who made it possible remains a footnote. His unpaid labor was transformed into an empire, and his name has been omitted from the story told by every badge and every trademark. Today, every Jeep on the road is a monument built on unpaid genius. Billions change hands, but Karl Probst's name remains absent. That is proof that even legends can be stolen in plain sight. Until we credit the forgotten, our icons stand on silence. Whose story have we erased next?